I'm staring into the mirror right now, and what's looking back at me is in my face. It's close enough to fool anyone passing by, but I know every angle of my own reflection, and this thing is wearing my skin like a costume. Its eyes don't line up with mine, they hover just a fraction higher, too still, too sharp. And the worst part? It's smiling, while I'm not. I don't think it started as a smile. At first, it was just a tiny twitch at the corner of its mouth, the kind of flicker you dismiss if you weren't watching carefully. But I couldn't look away. I've been standing here for what feels like hours, and the grin has spread until it's wider than my jaw should allow. It's standing behind my eyes, pressing against the inside of the glass, waiting for something I don't understand. Maybe you think I'm exaggerating, or that I've been awake too long. I wish you were right. I wish I could tell you this is just a story, some spooky internet post designed to give you chills before bed. But I'm not that creative. This is happening, right now, as I write and glance up at the mirror balanced against the wall. It hasn't blinked once. There's something you don't know about mirrors. Nobody talks about it because most people never stay long enough to notice. They glance, adjust their hair, move on. But if you hold their gaze, really hold it, you'll see there's a thickness behind the glass, a depth that shouldn't exist. Like water waiting for you to fall in. I learned that too late. My hands are sweating so much I can barely keep them still on the keyboard. Every few seconds, I have to look up, just to make sure the thing hasn't stepped out. Its shoulders are tense now, as if it's straining against the invisible line that keeps us apart. The air between us hums, faint but constant, like an electric charge. I don't think the barrier will last forever. I can't tell if I'm supposed to be terrified or flattered that it chose me. Maybe I'm neither, just unlucky. Still, there's a part of me, a tiny voice, whispering that I deserve this. That I asked for it when I brought the mirror home, propped it up in my bedroom like it was just another piece of furniture. I should have left it where I found it, dusty and forgotten in that cramped second-hand shop. The thing behind the glass tilts its head, imitating me almost perfectly. But there's always a delay, half a breath too long, like it's rehearsing before it performs. That pause is what keeps me sane, what lets me believe, for a heartbeat, that I still have an edge. Because if it ever moves at the same time as I do, if it closes that half-second gap, I don't know what will happen, and I don't want to find out. I wish I could look away, but the mirror punishes me when I try. My chest tightens, my vision flickers, and I feel an invisible hook tugging me back. So I keep watching, telling myself that as long as I see it, as long as I know where it is, I'm safe. That's a lie, but it's the only one holding me together. Maybe I should warn you before we go any further, if you've got a mirror nearby, you might want to turn it around. Cover it with something. Because once you know what I'm about to tell you, once you let the idea settle, you'll start to notice things too, the flickers, the half-smiles, the depth you can almost step into. And then you won't be able to unsee it. I didn't believe any of this either, not until tonight. I thought mirrors were just reflections, harmless glass and silver. I thought stories about cursed objects were for kids and ghost hunters. I thought wrong. There's a truth buried inside every mirror, a truth nobody wants to admit because admitting it makes it real. The thing staring back at me leans forward until its forehead almost touches the inside of the glass. My breath fogs the surface, but its breath doesn't. It's close enough now that I can see something moving behind its pupils, like ripples, or maybe fingers pressing against water. I think it wants out. I'm shaking. I need to tell this from the beginning, before it crosses whatever line it's pushing against. Maybe if I explain how I ended up with a mirror that doesn't reflect me, you'll understand why I can't just walk away. I should explain how it began. Before the mirror turned my nights into an endurance test, it was just another score from a lazy Saturday thrift run. My apartment isn't much, one bedroom, mismatched furniture, a kitchen that smells permanently like burnt toast no matter how many scented candles I light. I keep telling myself I'll upgrade, but somehow weekends vanish in a blur of takeout cartons and streaming shows I half-watch while scrolling. That day, I'd been hunting for something to hang over the dresser. The shop was cramped, the kind of place where every surface sags under a mountain of someone else's memories. I wasn't planning to buy a mirror. I just wanted wall art, maybe a print of a cat wearing sunglasses. Instead, I spotted an oval mirror leaning against a shelf of cracked teacups. The frame was tarnished silver, etched with patterns so faint you could mistake them for scratches. It looked heavier than it felt, like it wanted to be carried home. I told myself I liked its vintage charm. Really, I liked the price tag, $20. I wrapped it in an old hoodie, hauled it upstairs, and gave it a prime spot across from my bed. For a few days, it was just there. I'd glance at it while brushing my teeth or figuring out if my shirt looked less rumpled tucked or untucked. Nothing weird. Nothing cinematic. The first blip was so small I almost laughed it off. I was running late for work, coffee in one hand, tie in the other, trying to make my reflection resemble someone employable. That's when I noticed my shadow in the glass light, a fraction behind my movements, just a heartbeat, like an old video buffering. I blinked hard, thinking maybe I hadn't slept enough. I waved my arm again. The me in the mirror followed, but with a hiccup, a breath's delay. Then everything snapped back to normal so fast I questioned whether it happened at all. Great, I muttered, half to myself, half to the room. Now even my reflection's on a coffee break. I chuckled and left, pretending I wasn't unsettled. Over the next week, other glitches crept in, subtle as a mosquito bite you don't notice until it itches. I'd catch my mirrored smile arriving just a fraction late, or holding longer than mine, like it was reluctant to let go of the expression. Once, I bent to tie my shoes and caught it watching me before following suit. I kept telling myself mirrors do weird things with light. Angles, shadows, whatever. That's what I wanted to believe. But deep down, a question burrowed in: if it was just light, why did it feel aware? One night, scrolling through my feed, I paused on a post about haunted antiques you should never bring home. I didn't click, but a chill passed through me anyway. My brain whispered, you should check if that mirror's on the list. I didn't. Curiosity is dangerous when you already feel a story circling you. I started joking out loud, like I could make it less creepy by giving it attitude. You're not special, I'd say, pointing at my own face in the glass. Just a shiny rectangle with commitment issues. But the humor was thin, a paper shield against the quiet hum I sometimes thought I heard when the room was still. By the end of that week, I found myself hesitating before looking straight into it, as if meeting someone's eyes who knows too much. I told myself I was tired, that stress makes people see things. And maybe that's true. Maybe mirrors just reflect what we bring to them. Still, when I caught my reflection smiling after I'd already stopped, I couldn't shake the sense it wasn't reflecting anything at all. It was waiting. At first, I thought I'd grown used to the quirks, that my brain had filed the mirror under harmless weirdness and moved on. But the mirror wasn't content to stay a party trick. It wanted to evolve. The next shift happened on Thursday night, after a long day at work. I stood in front of the glass, loosening my tie, half watching my own tired face. That's when I noticed it again, the lag, only longer now. My brows drew together, and the me in the glass hesitated before matching the frown. I laughed nervously and tried raising an eyebrow like I was testing a child's reflex. It followed, but clumsily, as though it had to think about the muscles. That should have been the end of it, a weird anecdote for friends. Instead, I started experimenting. I'd grin suddenly, stick out my tongue, wink without warning. Every time, it caught up eventually, but always with that faint deliberation, like someone learning choreography. Then came the night it spoke. I was brushing my teeth, humming some random tune, when I felt it, a low vibration in the room, like the air waiting for thunder. I spat out foam, glanced up, and froze. My reflection was staring at me, but my own face felt absent, as if it had slipped behind the surface. Its mouth twitched, forming a shape I didn't make. I leaned closer, heartbeat slamming in my ears. What did you just? And then I heard it. Faint, muffled, but unmistakable, my name. I swear it mouthed my name. I staggered back, toothpaste dripping onto the sink. For a heartbeat, the thing grinned wide enough to show too many teeth. Then, just like that, it snapped back into position, blank and innocent, as though daring me to accuse it. After that, I couldn't look casually anymore. Every glance turned into a study session, every movement an interrogation. I tried to catch it off guard, moving fast or slow, pulling faces like a lunatic. Once, I locked eyes with it and refused to blink. Seconds stretched into a minute. My vision burned, tears sliding down my cheeks. Still, the thing didn't blink. It just tilted its head, curious, patient. Finally, I croaked, "Why don't you blink?" The words barely left my mouth before I realized how insane I sounded, talking to glass. But I wasn't talking to glass. I was talking to something. Its lips parted, and for a fraction of a second, I thought it might answer. Instead, its expression softened into something almost tender. A smile that didn't belong to me. That smile stuck with me through dinner, through scrolling mindlessly on my phone, through every attempt to act normal. Even when I left the room, I could picture it waiting behind the surface, like a predator crouched in tall grass. By the weekend, I'd convinced myself I needed proof. Maybe a recording would explain it, bad lighting, shadows, a twitch in my own muscles I hadn't felt. Anything rational. I set my phone on the dresser, propped at an angle so the camera faced the mirror. As I hit record, a sliver of excitement pushed past the fear, the way people lean closer to cliffs just to see what might happen. I gave the reflection a half salute, like we were about to play some strange game. Its hand lifted a breath later, a perfect echo. But the look in its eyes wasn't playful. It was calculating, measuring the space between us. That was the moment I understood, this wasn't just a quirk of glass or a trick of light. The thing inside was learning. And if it could learn, it could choose. I pressed stop on the recording, palms slick with sweat, and told myself I'd watch the footage in the morning, when the sun was up, when the room didn't hum with something alive. I didn't sleep much the night I set up the phone. I told myself it was just nerves, the same adrenaline you get before an exam or a long flight, but deep down I was terrified of what I might see in the morning. I propped the phone against a stack of books, lens aimed at the mirror, and hit record before climbing into bed. For a while, I lay there watching the faint red light blink. The mirror stood silent across the room, reflecting the pale moonlight that leaked through the blinds. My reflection was a dim blur, breathing in rhythm with me. I waited, holding my breath, half expecting it to break the silence. When it didn't, I finally let exhaustion drag me under. The next morning, my stomach twisted as I reached for the phone. 6 hours of footage waited, a flat line of stillness on the thumbnail. I hit play and sat cross-legged on the floor, forcing myself to watch. The first hour was uneventful, me turning in bed, the mirror patiently catching the faint light. But around 2:37 a.m., something shifted. My sleeping body rolled onto its side. A heartbeat later, the reflection in the mirror moved a fraction too late, and then kept moving even after I'd settled. I leaned closer to the screen. The figure in the glass straightened, shoulders rolling like someone stretching after a long nap. It turned its head, scanning the room, while I remained perfectly still beneath the blanket. I watched, frozen, as it took a step forward, not toward the camera, but deeper into the surface, like there was space behind the silver. For a few minutes it just stood there, staring at me with an expression I couldn't read. Then, slowly, it pressed a palm to the inside of the glass. My sleeping self didn't stir. I slammed the pause button and sat there, breath coming in short bursts. Maybe it was a glitch, some weird artifact from low light, a frame-skipping error. I replayed the moment, frame by frame. No glitch. Just deliberate motion. Shaken, I did what anyone cursed with too much internet access does. I went digging. At first I searched the obvious, mirror moving by itself, reflection acting weird. I waded through prank videos and clickbait until I found a thread buried on an old paranormal forum. The title was plain, Glass Guardians, anyone else? The posts were dated years apart, a scattering of usernames sharing scraps of experiences, reflections that didn't line up, shapes inside mirrors, a sense of being watched. One reply mentioned an archive subreddit, r/glassguardians, now wiped clean except for a cached description, for those who've seen what lives behind the silver. I followed the crumbs through archive screenshots and half-broken links. People spoke about rules, never leave a mirror uncovered at night, never let it see you sleep, and above all, don't give it your name. One user claimed the things behind mirrors collect identities the way collectors hoard rare coins. Somewhere between fascination and panic, I realized how far down the rabbit hole I'd gone. My heart thumped as I scrolled past a blurry image, a dark figure pressing a hand against glass, eerily similar to what I'd just watched. The caption read, "They learn fastest when you ignore them." I shut the laptop, pulse roaring in my ears. Ignoring it wasn't an option anymore. I could feel the mirror across the room, heavy with awareness, like it knew I was reading about it. If the stories were even half true, people had spent years trying to map whatever lurks behind the silver. Some claimed they'd succeeded, only to vanish without a trace. I stared at the dark screen, my own faint reflection staring back, and felt an undeniable pull. I had to test it myself. The rules I'd read online weren't exactly scientific, but they felt like the only lifeline I had. Don't leave the mirror uncovered at night. Don't let it watch you sleep. Don't speak your name near it. That last one echoed in my head as I stood in the bedroom, daylight spilling through the blinds, phone in hand. I decided to start small. I grabbed a bedsheet and draped it over the glass. For a second, relief washed through me, like closing a door on a room you don't want to clean. I turned to leave, but a faint vibration hummed behind me. Not loud, more like the earth-shifting pressure. The sheet trembled against the frame, a ripple moving from top to bottom. I told myself it was airflow. I yanked the sheet away to prove it. The mirror stared back, blank, but the edges of my reflection seemed softer, as if the glass had warmed. Next, I tried speaking to it. I perched on the dresser, leaning close enough that my breath fogged the surface. "If you're real," I said quietly, "do something." For a long minute, nothing happened. Then, a single tap came from inside the glass, not a creak of wood or a knock on the wall, but a sharp click, like fingernail on crystal. My stomach lurched. "Okay," I muttered, heart hammering. "That's new." I thought about the post warning never to give it your name. So I talked around it instead, throwing questions like stones into a lake. "What are you? How long have you been here?" Silence. My reflection copied my words, but the eyes felt too focused, too present. When I switched off the lamp, the room dimmed until only thin daylight spilled through the blinds. The mirror caught it all wrong, bending the light in a way that made the corners of the room seem deeper. I swear I saw movement just behind the silver, shapes pacing slowly, as if waiting their turn. I snapped the light back on, breathing hard. "This is ridiculous," I told the empty air. That night, I tried one last experiment. I boiled water for tea and brought the mug into the bedroom. Steam curled through the air as I held it near the glass. At first, nothing, just fog blooming across the surface. Then letters began to etch themselves into the condensation, clear as handwriting, "Stay." I stumbled backward, nearly spilling the tea. The letters faded as quickly as they appeared, leaving only my pale face staring out of a clean patch of glass. Adrenaline made me reckless. "Stay? Stay where? What do you want?" The mirror stayed silent, but the corners of its surface shivered, as though something inside was laughing quietly. I stepped closer, almost against my better judgment. My reflection tilted its head before I did, just slightly, like it was claiming ownership of the gesture. I don't know why I asked the next question. Maybe because fear makes you chase certainty. "Do you know me?" The fog bloomed again, slower this time, curling letters one by one. I couldn't breathe as the word formed. Nickname, the one only my family used when I was small, a name I hadn't spoken aloud in years. I froze, tea cooling in my hands. The room felt too tight, too heavy, as if the air itself leaned in to hear my reaction. The letters dripped down the glass, smudging into faint streaks, but I couldn't unsee them. That name belonged to a version of me buried in memory, a version no stranger could possibly know. Something inside the mirror did. After the fog spelled out my childhood nickname, I couldn't stop thinking about where the mirror had come from. The thrift shop had felt so ordinary that day, a jumble of old lamps, cracked china, forgotten sweaters, but the mirror didn't belong in that chaos. It felt curated, like someone had placed it there knowing I would pick it up. I called the shop the next morning. A woman with a smoker's rasp answered, sounding like I'd interrupted a nap. When I described the oval frame and faint etchings, there was a pause long enough to make me wonder if the line had gone dead. "Oh," she said finally, voice dropping. "That piece came from an estate sale. Old house on the edge of town. Belonged to a magician or illusionist, I think. Strange fellow. Died alone." She couldn't or wouldn't give me more details, just muttered that I'd gotten a bargain and hung up before I could press further. A magician's mirror. The idea made me laugh nervously at first, until I remembered something buried deep in memory. When I was 8, we'd gone to a traveling carnival. I'd begged my parents to take a family photo by the fortune teller's tent, where a man in a dark suit stood near a towering oval mirror. In the picture, my parents smile, and I'm in the middle with a dripping snow cone. But behind us, in the mirror's haze, there's a faint outline, not of us, not of anyone nearby, just a figure standing perfectly still, face blurred as if the glass had chosen to hide it. I dug the photo out of an old box, hands shaking. The frame in the picture matched the one leaning against my wall, down to the delicate scratches along the rim. I stared at the photo until the edges of my vision tingled. Had the mirror followed me all these years, or had I somehow wandered back into its orbit? I searched online for magicians connected to the house the thrift shop mentioned. Only one name came close, Elias Vey, a reclusive illusionist rumored to have dabbled in glasswork. The scraps I found described him as a man obsessed with reflections, convinced that mirrors were doors waiting for the right key. Some articles hinted at assistants who disappeared during his later shows, chalked up to theatrics. But there were whispers, notes in crumbling newsletters, comments on forgotten blogs about people who visited Vey's private collection and never returned. My hands trembled on the keyboard. If this mirror was one of Vey's experiments, maybe it wasn't just a prop. Maybe it was a trap, or a lure, left behind for someone reckless enough to take it home. I looked over at the glass now, catching my reflection from the corner of my eye. It didn't move, but I could feel its attention, patient and heavy, like a predator biding its time. A part of me wanted to drag it outside and smash it to pieces, but another part, the same part that had carried it home from the shop without a second thought, needed to know more. Others had stepped through this same curiosity and never come back. I should have felt warned, but instead I felt the pull tighten, quiet and irresistible, as if the story wasn't done with me yet. I stopped sleeping properly after that night. Even when I closed my eyes, I saw the silver surface waiting, the way it seemed to breathe behind its stillness. By the third day I'd thrown sheets over every reflective surface in the apartment, bathroom tiles, the black screen of my TV, even the kettle. Anything that could hold a glint of my face felt dangerous. The mirror, though, I couldn't cover it for long. Every time I draped a blanket across it, I woke up to find the fabric folded neatly on the floor, like someone had peeled it back to make sure I was still watching. My friends started texting, worried. "You've gone radio silent," Claire wrote. "Everything okay?" I tried to joke it off, "Just busy." But she called anyway, and the second I picked up she said, "You sound awful. Are you sick?" "I'm fine," I lied, pacing the kitchen with my phone pressed tight to my ear. My voice sounded hoarse, even to me. "You don't sound fine. Come stay at my place for a bit. Whatever's going on, you don't have to." I said I'm fine. The words came out sharp, and she went quiet. I hated myself for snapping, but part of me was relieved she didn't push harder. I couldn't explain that a piece of glass had started controlling my life. That evening I tried to keep myself awake with coffee and podcasts. Around 3 a.m., I caught movement in my peripheral vision. I turned, heart hammering. The mirror was glowing faintly, like moonlight trapped inside. My reflection stood there, but its arms were crossed, a posture I hadn't taken. Then it shifted, just slightly, and the glass rippled. The surface showed something new, me, lying on the floor, eyes wide and glassy, a dark smear stretching from my temple. My own body, dead, framed inside the silver. I stumbled backward, knocking a mug off the counter. It shattered, but I couldn't look away. The image in the mirror wasn't static, it was moving, almost cinematic. I watched as future me twitched once, then stilled, a pool widening beneath my head. "No," I whispered. "That's not real." The reflection tilted its head, as if pitying me. Then it raised one finger and traced something invisible on the glass. I couldn't read it, but I felt the meaning settle in my gut, soon. The next morning I dragged the mirror into the closet, wedged it between coats, and slammed the door. For a while I sat on the floor outside, shaking. But even with the wood between us, I felt its presence, patient and watchful. Claire texted again, "Come out tonight. We'll get drinks, clear your head." I typed a reply, erased it, tried again. Finally I put my phone face down. I didn't trust myself to leave. What if the vision wasn't a threat but a schedule? By nightfall, the apartment felt smaller, walls inching closer. I avoided the closet, but the silence behind the door was worse than any knock could have been. When I finally dared to glance at the sliver of mirror still visible through the crack, I saw myself, not as I was, but as I would be, lying perfectly still on the floor. I woke before dawn, nerves raw from another night of staring at the ceiling. The mirror sat in the closet like a caged animal, humming faintly against the wood. I couldn't stand it any longer. Today, I told myself, it ends. I hauled the mirror into the living room and leaned it against the wall. Dust drifted from its frame, glittering in the pale morning light. I'd armed myself with a hammer and a heavy blanket, determined to smash it and bury the shards somewhere no one could find. For a moment the surface stayed dull, my tired face hovering there, gray and lined. Then the glass brightened, rippling as if stirred from a dream. My reflection smiled first, slow, deliberate, while I stood stone still. "You don't have to do this," it said. The voice wasn't mine. It sounded like my father, gentle and warm, the way he used to speak when I was small and afraid of storms. I gripped the hammer tighter. "You're not him." The reflection's mouth curved further. I can be anyone you want." The cadence shifted, suddenly Claire's voice, "Please don't break me. Think about what I can show you." I swallowed hard, the taste of copper rising in my mouth. "You're just glass." "Glass that knows you," it corrected, still wearing Claire's face. "Glass that remembers everything you've tried to forget." The images flickered across its surface, mistakes I'd hidden, words I wished I'd swallowed, nights I didn't want anyone to know about. My own shame cataloged in silver. "You think you're the only one who's ever looked," it whispered, dropping back into my voice. "People have begged me for a glimpse of what they'll never earn alone. I can make you brilliant, adored, untouchable. I can give you a way out of every failure you've ever feared." I shook my head, but curiosity threaded through the terror. What if it was telling the truth? "If I tell you what it offered," I said hoarsely, "you want it too." The mirror pulsed, almost pleased. "All you have to do is step closer. Place your palm flat against the glass. I'll show you everything, the life you should have had." I took a single step forward before forcing myself to stop. "That's not real." "Reality is only what you choose to believe," it answered smoothly. "You've already seen your death. Let me show you the way to avoid it." My knuckles whitened around the hammer. I could feel my heartbeat in my teeth. "You think smashing me will free you?" the reflection asked. Its smile sharpened. "If you break me, I'll scatter inside every surface you meet, every phone screen, every window. You'll never know where I'm waiting." That image, endless fragments of its face hiding in every reflection I ever pass, nearly rooted me to the floor. But beneath the fear, something steadier pushed through, anger. This thing had fed on my doubt, my grief, my need to know. It wanted me caged by its promises. I raised the hammer. The reflection's eyes widened, shifting again, my father's sorrowful gaze, Claire's pleading look, then finally my own face, twisted with panic. "Last chance," it said softly. I tightened my grip and drew a breath so deep it hurt. "No," I said, voice steady for the first time in weeks. "You had yours." I swung. The hammer came down with every ounce of strength I had. The glass shrieked as cracks split across its surface, sharp as lightning bolts. For a heartbeat I felt triumph. I'd done it. I'd finally silenced it. Then the pieces didn't fall. The fractures ran like veins, but the shards clung together, trembling, forming 100 little windows that all showed me at once. In each one I wore a different expression: fury, despair, terror. A dozen mouths shaped my name in perfect, soundless unison. I hit it again. And again. The mirror only shivered, the webbing deepening but never releasing its hold. A ripple passed through the shards, knitting them back together until the glass looked nearly whole, save for faint white scars tracing the places I'd struck. "No," I whispered, backing away. My hands throbbed from the blows. The reflection stepped closer, not mine anymore, but a patchwork of faces I knew and faces I didn't. "You can't break what you invited," it murmured. Its voice came from everywhere, a vibration in the air rather than sound. "We've been waiting too long." I bolted for the closet, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. I dragged the mirror across the floor, its surface rippling under my fingers like water stretched too thin. When I shoved it into the darkness and slammed the door, the apartment sighed, a sudden drop in pressure, like a storm breaking. For a few breaths I just stood there, forehead against the door, tasting dust and sweat. Silence pressed in, heavy and absolute. Then, faintly, came a knock from inside the closet. Slow. Patient. I grabbed a chair and wedged it under the handle. The wood vibrated under my palms, a quiet rhythm matching my pulse. I stepped back, trembling, forcing myself not to look at the sliver of silver peeking between the doorframe and the hinge. The apartment was too still. Even my own breath sounded alien. I tried to convince myself it was over, that I'd trapped whatever it was, cut it off from me. But as I turned away, a whisper threaded through the quiet. At first I thought it was my name. Then I realized it wasn't speaking to me at all. It was speaking to you. The voice seeped from the cracks around the closet door, soft and sly, curling into the room like smoke. I couldn't make out the words at first, only the cadence, intimate, knowing. Then it grew clearer, shaping a single word with perfect precision: your name. I froze. My skin prickled with the certainty that the mirror wasn't locked away. It was simply waiting, stretching invisible fingers toward the next person who might glance its way. I don't dare touch the door now. I don't dare look at any reflection for too long. Because if it can find you through me, it means it's already closer than either of us can see. I'm writing this now because I don't know how much longer I'll have the nerve. My hands won't stop shaking, and every keystroke feels like a countdown, but I need to get this out before it swallows me whole. The mirror is still locked in the closet. I shoved furniture in front of the door, stacked boxes on top, anything to make the barrier feel real. But the voice hasn't stopped. Sometimes it hums like someone thinking just out of earshot, sometimes it murmurs sentences I can't quite catch. And sometimes it says my name, not the way I say it, but as though it already owns it. I thought about destroying it again, dragging it outside and setting it on fire. But a splinter of fear stops me every time. What if breaking it only scatters whatever's inside, spilling it into everything that shines? My laptop screen, the kitchen faucet, even the dark of my own eyes. So instead, I'm doing the only thing that makes sense. I'm telling you. Maybe this is a warning, or maybe it's just a confession carved into a digital wall before the thing behind the glass erases me completely. Either way, you deserve to know the rules, or at least the fragments I pieced together. Rule 1, don't stand too close to a mirror in the dark. Especially not if you feel like it's waiting for you. Rule 2, never let it be the first to smile. That's how it knows you're listening. Rule 3, if you see words on the glass that you didn't write, walk away. Even if they're sweet. Especially if they're sweet. I wish someone had told me sooner. A soft creak draws my eyes to the closet. The chair wedged under the handle has shifted, just slightly. I swallow hard and focus on the glow of the screen. The reflection of the room hovers faintly in its black bezel, warping around the white of this document. Something moves there, a shimmer, quick as a blink. I tell myself it's just my own outline, but my pulse knows better. The voice comes again, hushed but close enough to fog the inside of my head. They're reading, aren't they? I don't answer. Good, it says, with a slow, please sigh. That's how it spreads. I keep typing, faster now, because I can feel its attention stretching through the glass, brushing the edges of the words as they form. I'm not sure when it started smiling, but I can see it now in the reflection on the screen. My face is tense, jaw locked, but the other one, the one leaning just behind the glow, grins wide and unblinking. I should stop, shut the laptop, walk away, but I can't. I need you to understand what's waiting if you linger too long on your own reflection. Because here's the thing, mirrors don't just show you. They keep you. They measure the parts you don't notice and feed them to something patient enough to wait a lifetime. I don't know how many people have already looked too long. I only know that once you've seen it, once it's seen you, there's no unseeing. If you've read this far, I'm sorry. Maybe you felt it already, the faint pressure behind your eyes, the way your screen seems to lean closer. That isn't imagination. It likes attention. So don't give it more than you have to. Don't replay this, don't stare at the edges of your device trying to decide if something's there. And above everything else, if your mirror smiles first, run.